Welcome everybody, and a reminder, I've just done myself because I forget, switch your mobile phones to silent please. There are members of the public press attending this meeting virtually, so can I ask those attending virtually to switch off your microphone to avoid any disruption during the meeting. The meeting is being recorded and will be available in due course on the council's YouTube channel. And a reminder for councillors, please speak as clearly as you can and project your voice. Please remember it's a formal meeting, so don't refer to each other by first names, and there's no fire alarm planned. So leave the building if it goes off via your nearest marked fire exit and assemble at the top of the car park. We'll move into the agenda. Mr. Ball, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, received apologies from councillors Hunt and Petrinos, Chair.
And Robin Milton as well. So
Brian Bell is not able to come as well. He's
Any other apologies? Yeah, item 2 is the minutes of the last meeting. Can somebody close those? Councillor Lever, attended by Councillor Prue Master. All those in favour of the minutes be approved. Thank you. Item 3, just one item. I've asked Kit because she just stopped me outside and stuff, so I don't have to say it all. I've asked Kit, who's done a lot of organisation for the peer review later on this month, come in and say a couple of words. And can I just remind you all of that first of all? And it is going to be important. We are adopting a come and inspect us and look at us, warts and all, and just be honest with the people who come in, and you know, we've got nothing to lose. I think we're a very good council, and let's just be honest with them. See how it goes. But there's no reason why we shouldn't be prepared for it and to try and make it run as smoothly as we can. Kit.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors. Yeah, I'm Kit. I think I have met most of you in person, but you certainly will have seen my name on several emails. It was just to say thank you to everyone who has RSVP'd for various meetings. It's only 2 weeks away now. I think I've heard from most of you, but there are a few names, particularly for the SNR meeting, the scene setting meeting, which sort of kicks off the week, and the feedback meeting. There's a few I haven't heard from. It might be that there's kind of a glitch with the teams and kind of RSVP, and we've had a few of those. So don't worry if not, but I'm happy to resend some things, and I'll probably do another reminder just in case I'm still missing any, but it'd be great to see as many of you there as possible. And if there's any reason that you can't come in person, we can look at hybrid, and even then, if there's something that you really can't make it, we've got the possibility of getting in touch with one of the peer team in advance by email, so you can still contribute any thoughts. If you can't be there in person, they'd love to hear from you in that way. So you can sort all of that out. But yeah, if you've still got any sort of hanging around in your inbox, please do let me know if you're going to be there or not. Thank you.
What Kit hasn't said actually, she's got the list of names on that little
I do.
thing. She asked me to read them out. I said, no, you can come in and tell them what, and then if they haven't responded in a week, you can let me know, Kit, and I'll try and chase them and stuff.
Brilliant. Thanks all.
And sorry to put you on the spot there, Kit, but thanks for doing it. Okay, there's no other items brought forward, so item 4, declarations of interest.
Yes, Chair, councillor Peter Lever has declared an other registrable interest in item 8 on the agenda for transparency reasons.
And that'd be like to go. That's because we're both members of the Barnstaple Town Council. But we can stay in, Simon,
Yeah.
and speak and vote.
yeah, that's right, Chair. Yeah.
Any other declaration of interest? Thank you. Item 5, to agree the agenda between Part A and Part B. There was some discussion, but I think we've agreed that everything was in Part A.
Yes, Chair. Well, the legal advice, Chair, is in Part B in full. Obviously, item 10 obviously will refer to the legal advice that's in Part B in terms of high level in the context. Obviously, if members want to go into detail around the legal advice in terms of what's contained or start really talking about it, obviously we may need to move into Part B depending on the questioning, but high level questioning around the context is fine within Part B.
Thank you. So we're going to part A. Item 6, local government reorganisation. Chief Exec to report is, are you going to do this job? I will share it. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, morning members. So since your last strategy and resources meeting, in terms of things that have moved on since then, you'll be aware that Devon County Council have launched their proposal, known as the 911. That's Plymouth, Torbay and the rest of Devon. I'm not going to go into detail around that. Obviously, you'll see from the press that was released, the leader promoted it as the least worst option. I'll leave that for members to conclude.
The leader of the county council.
Leader of the county council, sorry, Chair, promoted it as the least worst option. Obviously, I'll leave that for your own conclusions in terms of the messaging around that. In terms of significant work on the wider proposals, that's continuing in collaboration with the Devon District Partners and also our consultants KPMG on the 145 model. We have facilitated a workshop here at Brinsworthy a couple of weeks ago, which included all the chief execs from the wider councils and also our partners at KPMG. That focused on a couple of the criteria around governance arrangements and that work stream and community engagement, and the importance in round of having the number of members around a potential unitary and the importance of that rural urban split to make sure that there is some consistency around the population, because obviously rural and urban populations are so significantly different, and the importance of making sure there is some clear credibility behind any proposals that go forwards under that criteria. The other criteria is around financial modelling, and there's been a significant amount of work done by the Section 151 officers in partnership with Pixel, and that together with the work that had been done to date on options appraisal was presented to chief executives at that meeting. We've also provided a number of case studies to support the submission, and that's around things that have been happening within the North Devon area. All the councils are submitting case studies to play alongside any submission. And the Devon chief execs and the project teams are continuing to work closely together to the timeline in terms of the November submission. The Northern Devon place story that's being worked on separately, that's coming together. The place leads have a meeting tomorrow morning to develop further that narrative, and that will obviously be fed into the proposals that will be going forwards. The leader and myself joined a meeting of the leaders and chief execs of the Devon authorities on Friday afternoon, where KPMG presented the work that had been done to date. So that work is still in draft and is still ongoing, but also explaining the process that sits behind that in terms of the options appraisals, and also to provide confidence to the chief execs and the leaders in terms of the credible amount of work that's going on and the collaboration that's taking place between the partner councils. Because that's an important message in terms of going out to the public when we start doing press and comms around that we're working together on these submissions, and that partnership work in terms of all of the areas coming together is important. In terms of things between now and November when the submission goes in, the aim is to set up some informal member briefings so that that work that's being done to date can be relayed to members. So that will be starting to be planned for this month. We're going to be looking at the tail end of this month so that we can start to then present to members the work that's been done by the team, the work that's gone on in terms of the options appraisal, and how that work then is then concluding with what goes forward in the submission. What we have agreed through Devon is that that's done at a similar time, so that the messaging to members is done at the same time to all councils, so the messaging isn't starting to get out at different times to different councils. And similarly, in terms of any joint PR and comms, that we do that at the same time so that messaging goes out through our own channels with similar messaging. And that was agreed on Friday between with the leaders.
Sorry, John, we did say on Friday, though, that we've got a meeting this afternoon, haven't we, where it would be, I think, decided which bits we can release, if possible.
Yes. Yeah.
On those slides, which shows the options appraisal in detail.
Correct. Yeah.
And I
So
think we might have the ability to release that after today's meeting.
Yeah, so there's certain bits, obviously information and slides are still being worked upon. So obviously we don't want to be releasing that yet because obviously that work is still in progress. But obviously in terms of the context, in terms of the work that's been done to date and how we're getting to the stage, obviously, of what will go in the submission, The chief execs and the leaders will this afternoon run through, in a sense, what they feel is appropriate to be released at this stage, so that members can start to see how that's being built up in advance of the submission going in. But as you can appreciate, there's some information in there that we wouldn't want to get out at this stage until that has been finalised, because a lot of that number crunching and information is still being worked on at the moment. Internally, we've held some staff briefings to make sure that staff are being fully informed and kept up to date with the process. Chief Executive has been very honest and open with staff around the work that's been done to date, the things that we can assure staff on. There's lots of things that are still unknown, of course, in terms of we're getting to the point of submissions going in, and obviously that needs to then have a decision made by government. But all of the work's being done to date is being shared in terms of that process with staff as well, so that we're fully up to date with the timelines, when things are happening, when decisions will be made, and also to answer any questions and try to alleviate any concerns that staff may have. We've updated our internal intranet with frequently asked questions so that they can be constantly updated, so that staff have the full picture of exactly where we're going, the timeline, and when obviously further information is available, then we'll be continuing to keep staff up to date. The chief executive continues to do regular blogs and puts those out to staff on a regular basis, so those that can't attend the staff briefings also get to know the full picture of everything that's going on. So, Chair, I think that's it in terms of things that have happened since your last update. Happy to take any questions, but there's a considerable amount of work being going on behind the scenes by the team. Officers from this council are supporting that process, and for yourself and the meetings you're attending. Obviously, we'll continue to keep staff and members abreast of the situation.
Thanks, John. Any questions? Councillor Knight and Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, you alluded to collaboration, and I appreciate that's vital, but I'm also in receipt of many references to the fact that collaboration is not going so well. Are you able to enlarge upon that?
In what context that collaboration is not going so well?
The district councils working together for a combined response, a combined approach to HMG.
All of the councils are joining those meetings. Obviously, Devon County Council are put their own submission in. We're aware from those that have been announced. Obviously, the likes of Plymouth and Exeter obviously are putting their own submissions in as well. So that doesn't stop us putting submissions in that include those authorities. But all of the districts are sat at the table. Obviously, Exeter and Plymouth obviously are working on their own submissions. Likewise, Torbay are as well. But Torbay are attending the meetings and working in partnership with us. So I think as best as can be, the majority of partners are at the table. I don't think we're going to get everybody sat around the table, but at least we are working together with all of the districts and making sure that we are talking to each other and including those other partners in the conversations that we're having.
I think as on top of that, on Friday, I actually asked a specific question, didn't I? Whether we go around and find out just what each council is still thinking of doing. Obviously, this is districts,
Yes.
not the county. And I was surprised actually, because every council was there. There was South Hams going for the 145 still, East Devon, West Devon, and Torridge particularly, and obviously Exeter wasn't there because this was the meeting of the 145, but they were all in favour of the 145. In fact, we were the only ones who said, well, we're still, our full council, we still went for the 145, but we agreed to look at other options that favoured a more northern place as well. And but at the moment, it's the county that are out of sync now with the districts, and that's where you might have got some kind of mismatch. And I don't know what's going on. I can't answer for the county, but the districts are pretty united on the 145 thing still.
Yes, I can have a supplementary. Excuse me.
Yeah.
It's just that it's very odd to me that since we were working towards a combined authority with Torbay, that Devon County Council have now come up with a proposal which in essence stops that combination and puts Torbay out on a limb by itself.
I'm not going to defend what Devon County can.
I'm sure you're not. Sir.
I thought the whole idea of coming up with a 145 suggestion initially was because it stopped in one big Devon, which has failed social services, has failed children in its present situation, and what they're going to do, continuity. And, you know, if speaking personally, I think certain people have been influenced by officers and come out with that. Shouldn't say that, but I have.
Chair, I don't want to go over old ground, and I think I got a bit criticised for insisting that we added to our resolution about being opposed to the big one mass Devon. You know, good job we did, and I hope other districts would take that on board. But what concerns me more than anything else is that the county, I mean, we've made sure all our members are involved in this debate. We haven't always agreed, but in the end, we've not fallen out, and we're still united in our wish that we get something which has got more of a local feel to it. The thing that worries me is that the county council, I understand, are going to make this decision at cabinet, which is made up only of two parties, I understand, of the four that are on the county, and there is no member from North Devon on the cabinet, and only one from Northern Devon across in Torridge. And I think that really speaks a lot to the people of North Devon, doesn't it? You know, that we're not going to be included in their debate and their decision. And I just think that is really, you know, for a party of which I am still a member, as you know, Chair, I find that quite disgraceful.
Yeah,
I mean, I really do.
Well,
I just think the county really ought to hold a special meeting and hear the views of each and every county councillor right across the whole of Devon. And I think it's a disgrace that they're not doing it, Chair.
We've got to be careful here as well. I mean, we're talking about other county, and we're perfectly entitled to do. But it's how it's been united on something ourselves that's important now in moving forward and working with the other districts, because I was as surprised as anybody when the county came out with what they've done. Councillor Lever, Caroline Lever.
Clearly, I'm a county councillor. I'm not part of the cabinet, not part of the leadership team. On the county one sit as chair, so I am politically neutral. However, if I look at all of this and what's been going on, what's really clear to me is that at the absolute centre of this must be, how do we as councillors, and whatever council comes out of this, the focus needs to be on how we serve the communities in our area and how we do that to the best of our ability. And I am reminded again and again that the work of councillors, it's pretty hard work, which we sign up for, but that the moving from a county to and district level to a unitary model means that the calls on councillors to have knowledge of all sorts of different stuff increases. Now, I'm sure that, you know, probably we can all do that, but there is a question to me about the governance side of things, about the Boundary Commission has been really clear that only in very exceptional circumstances will they allow a council of more than 100 councillors. Now, if we ended up with the government deciding to go with the one giant Devon, and if the Boundary Commission then said, well, I'm sorry, you have to have fewer than 100, we'd be looking at a single councillor serving about, well, upward of 7,000 people per councillor. And I think, how can we, in all good consciousness, think that that's a good idea in terms of how we are able to serve people? You know, how is, you know, West Down, for example, they might have a fantastic councillor. How is their voice going to be heard? I think there's also something, I'm not picking on West Down particularly, but genuinely, any of our communities, how are their voices going to be heard? And I think that, you know, whilst I have some real problems with the government deciding that taking decision making further away from localities is a good idea, and their rhetoric is that it takes it closer, I actually don't agree with them. it then comes down to not just the model about how many unitaries and the shape of those unitaries, but actually about the lower level, the sort of community level, the how will planning be dealt with, what these area boards or area committees or whatever, and about how those are put together in a way which actually makes sense for our local communities. So a question. I have got a question. So my question is, in terms of the options appraisals, which I understand we cannot see yet, are those options appraisals looking at the different suggested models, referencing back to what came out of government initially in terms of the criteria they set out? For example, the population size of a unitary between 300 and 500-ish thousand, having a main economic driver. Because it seems to me that whatever model we have, a government will decide. The decision is taken out of our hands. But the more closely we are able to go for an option which aligns with what government have said they want, the more likely we are to have success with that. And I just wondered if that's what the options appraisal covers. I mean, I can't wait to see it personally. And I suppose, the other thing to say is that for me, there are so many issues about how the north of the county is different from the south of the county that I wonder whether the options appraisal takes any account of that. I'm doing a lot of travelling around. It seems like I'm spending an awful lot of time in the southwest of the county at the moment. It's so different. And I wonder whether the options appraisal has any recognition of the differences within this vast county. I think we're the biggest county in the country. Huge.
So the answer to the first question, obviously, yes, the options appraisal is looking at all of the potential models that potentially could be on the table, and looking at the pros and cons of those against the 6 criteria that government sets, so that it can come up with a result that, in a sense, provides the most appropriate and balanced outcome. Because that's the crucial thing, is it? That's 6 criteria.
Yeah.
You can't just focus on one of the criteria, which might be around finance, because it's all around all of the other things the criteria recognises around community representation, governance, etc. So there's a whole realm of different elements within those 6 criteria. So the options appraisal, in a sense, scores each of the options against that to then look at coming up with what's the most balanced approach moving forwards. Part of that is also around those governance arrangements and community representation. As I alluded to, the governance work stream has worked extremely hard looking at that member representation side of things, because, as you say, the county is so different in different areas. There are urban pockets, there are rural pockets, and you can't just take the existing member representation and, for example, come up with a new number. You have to look at the rurality of that, the urban split, the rural split, and make sure that that has got a balance to it as well. So part of the work that's going on within the team, within that options appraisal, is covering off that governance representation to make sure that communities are served and that there's fairness across the whole patch.
A quick supplementary, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm just thinking, I am really concerned about the government side of things, and and as Councillor Price mentioned, we are keen to make sure that our area is represented, and not just our individual wards, but the north of the county. And I wondered whether there's any information out there about any potential models of the more community level, locality level governance, in terms of whether suggestions might be, whether those I'm going to call them area committees, because I don't know what they're called or what they might be called, but whether those will have likely to have devolved budgets, or whether there is, they are advisory and it all goes back up to cabinet, and if there is any idea If we then, if we.
The
vote
idea-
on that-
yeah. Thanks, councillor. The idea of area committees, which in theory is a good thing, is not a condition that the government has laid down. So it is up to us and up to the different models to devise what our system of those would be if we're going to have them. And that's something that was discussed briefly on Friday, but we're going to return to that, aren't we?
Yes, Chair. So, yeah, obviously it's on,
But it's not a condition.
it's not a condition. Obviously, neighbourhood area committees obviously been touched on within the county proposal. As you've alluded to, I think the governance around that, there's lots of partnerships and things already in place, and some of that has gone through in the case studies that we've submitted or will be submitting alongside our submission. And a lot of that good work that already exists in North Devon. What you wouldn't want to do is do away with that, because a lot of that good work continues and adds a lot of value, and a lot of the communities are engaged in that. So it's important to recognise what currently goes on, and not go out and say, well, we're just going to do X, Y, and Z in addition to that. It's important to make sure that that is complemented and that we put in place what the area actually needs. I think the important message is that the team are doing a lot of detailed work behind each of those criteria to make sure that what is submitted has some credibility behind it. I think that's the importance, that we cover off each of those criteria, and that each of those criteria have got evidence base behind it, that it's credible when it goes to the government. All of the areas that we need to tick off have been covered, but also have got substantial credibility being.
Thank you.
Councillor Walker, did you want to?
No, it's, John said what I was going to say.
This is just a brief update, really, so the question can come in, which I'm sure we can answer if anybody wants to. Is there anything else on that? Okay, thank you, John. We'll move on. Item 7, possible work programme is issued, Sarah June.
Thank you, Chair. Members will see that this is a report to note, so I will take you through it fairly quickly. But I was asked to pull together a programme of work, that's an activity that's happening in Barnstaple as our sub-regional centre. As members will know, the Barnstaple Vision was adopted in 2020 and remains the framework for regeneration activity across the town. And it has been pivotal in our ability to access and be successful in funding bids. Members will also be aware, I'm sure, that in February 22, the High Street Task Force announced that 68 local authorities would be supported. We were one of them, and members agreed that Barnstaple should be the town that we asked them to have a look at. As part of that, a number of stakeholder events, etc., were carried out, and they identified for us the challenges and opportunities that we had in the town. And as part of that, the outcome, if you like, was a placemaking action plan, and that was set out under 5 key themes, set out on page 17. But in short, improving the look and feel of the town centre, the functionality of the town centre, improving the offer, create opportunities to change, and improving place management. And as part of that, we reviewed the governance for Barnstaple, and that was in direct response to that work. We previously were working under the Barnstaple Regeneration Board. That was disbanded, and Barnstaple Place Partnership was formed. Members will note that the terms of reference in the I'll set that in the appendices to the report. It brings together place leaders across the council, business, voluntary and community sectors. And as again, it sets out in the report, organisations must report back to their own organisation the work of that partnership. Starting on page 18, we've taken you through that action plan and some of the work that we are doing in direct response to that. So just to give you a few examples, where we're talking about improving the look and feel of the town, the Street Theme Operatives group has been established across a number of partners. public realm work have been funded by the UK Shared Prosperity Fund with new bins and benches. And we work on clean up town initiatives with partners. There are similar examples that are presented through the report on the action plan that I won't go through in detail, but to give you another example with improving the functionality of the town centre, members will be aware that a wayfinding strategy has been developed and they may well have seen the finger posts that have been implemented across the town with plinth to follow. That's being funded through the Cultural Development Funds. I then, on page 22, talk you through the regeneration project that we are currently working on in the town. Again, members will be familiar with these. They are presented in the programme reports to you. But Devon Brethren, as members will know, is the delivery of 180 homes that we're doing in partnership with Tarka Living Limited. And following the demolition of the old leisure centre and the delivery of the new car park, work is now starting on the residential development, and a press release was communicated in the last couple of weeks in that regard. The Future High Street Fund programme and the modelling work with the Environment Agency are just other examples of that identified in that section. The report then takes you through the cultural initiatives that we're working on in the town, driven by the Barnstable Plan for Culture that was adopted in 2023. And the direct projects that are emerging from that are set out. The contractor for the Bridge Chambers work is now working on site, and that will be completed in March 26. The community safety projects that we are working on in the town, improving the feeling of safety in Barnstable, requires collaboration across both North Devon Council teams, but also with external partners. And we've secured a significant amount of funding in that regard, which is set out in the report on page 25. And we'll be talking about further in the next item presented to you. At 4.8, we talk about the housing projects that we're delivering in Barnstable, and the decision that members have taken related to having registered provider status will mean that the 10 units that we'll be delivering as Future High Street Fund will be social rented units. At 4.9, we talk about the parks and leisure projects in the town. And again, has been previously reported to you, we've seen our millionth visitor to Barnstable Leisure Centre very recently. 4.10, employment and skills project. The Barnstable Work Hub is identified here. And through UK Shared Prosperity funding, again, we worked with over 300 people across 24-25 and will continue to do in 26 to help them find employment, take part in education and learning and engaging in volunteering activity. At 4.11, we talk you through asset management. That is just a very small part of the work that we do in this regard, but highlights our key assets in the town, of which members are familiar. In terms of the next steps and performance reporting, the report seeks to provide you with an update on all of the work that is going on across the town, and particularly related to Barnstable Vision and the work of the High Street Task Force. We will now seek to provide members with an update on the work of Barnstable Place Partnership quarterly, and that will be reported through Strategy and Resources Committee going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah Jane. Very comprehensive report. Councillor David Nice and Councillor Caroline Lever.
Yes, Chair. As a ward member, it's really excellent to see this report and an update on all the things that are happening in this kind of compressed format. We can just see what's happening, where we're going with things, which is really excellent. And as ward member on page 22, 4.5, the Oliver buildings, as we know, have been in and out of social media, and the sort of thorn in the ointment, or whatever what phrase you want to use. But it would be good to have some sort of timeline perhaps on for the members of the public who actually and not getting misinformation in the press on when that kind of report would come to fruition, and kind of sort of look at those options and maybe looking at kind of some sort of press release or just being able to provide the public. Because for me as ward member, I get asked all the time, what's happening, and I just have to say I don't know. So actually, even if we obviously as a council we can't do anything, but we can at least provide a kind of position, formal position in maybe a press release or something, and obviously that can filter through to all the parish and town councils, particularly Barnstaple and the neighbouring parishes, and just provide that information to the public really on where we are, if anything can happen and when it could happen. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So as members are aware, the Oliver buildings are in private ownership. However, we are also aware that they form the gateway to the town, and whilst there is planning permission granted on that site, that there is no sign of implementation currently of that planning permission. So what we have done is working with Historic England, we've sought some funding from them to commission the feasibility study that's referenced in this table. That work has been, that Ferguson Mann architects are working on that for us. They were given 6 months to do that, both looking at understanding the costs involved in the work, the conservation deficit, if you like, but also trying to understand what the best use of those buildings would be going forward, both from a viability and a regeneration perspective. That work is ongoing. At the moment, we're expecting the report to the end of November time. And so at that point, we'd be in a better position to update members on what the options might be and whether there is anything that the council can do proactively related to it.
Will that report actually say then what I should imagine it won't say a great deal as to the owner and what they're going to do because of expenses and things. But will it say what we as a council can actually do? I know we've done some already, but what powers we've actually got at our disposal?
From a regulatory perspective. Do you mean from a regulatory perspective?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, as you say, we have done some work with the owners in terms of enforcement. Yes, it will set out those tools, but I think more importantly, it will provide us with the information to inform decision making going forward. So understanding from an independent perspective what that viability gap looks like, and whether there are ways of regenerating those buildings in a different way. But until we get that report, it's difficult for me to comment further, but it should provide us with information to be able to make decisions going forward.
Councillor Carl-Lever.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah Jane, for this really hugely informative report. Thank you very much indeed for it. I think, and also thank you for letting us know there's going to be quarterly sort of updates really on it. I think that's tremendously helpful. And I note in it that there are various places where particular funding that has been secured by the district council has been identified, such as the 2.2 million land release funding from government to enable Severn Brethren to go ahead. I'm just going to note these because I thought these were fantastic. On page 22, the £6.5 million of funding from MHCLG for the Future High Streets Fund, and that work is obviously going ahead nicely. Page 25, back in 2023, securing about 350,000 Safer Streets funding. And then also I note on the page 27, the £1 million local authority housing funds, £1 million secured for delivering various different projects in Barnstaple, just as 4 examples. But I sort of, I look at this and I read there is so much work that's going on to support Barnstaple as basically the sub-regional centre and as a driver of economic development across the north of the county. I think what I don't see here, and I just wondered if potentially in future we could have maybe as an appendix or something, is almost like a schedule against, so that we can see for each of these various different projects, basically, where's the money come from? How much have we, particularly, because I tell you, I think it's a really good news story that the council has been successful in securing so much funding from external sources to kind of to try to deliver the work that we as councillors want to see, but also that people of North Devon benefit from, particularly. Securing external funding to do stuff is an extremely helpful thing to make our council taxpayers' money go considerably further.
I think, Councillor Lever, we can, if it's not clear already in the activity reports from the programme, so the projects that you've referenced where we're securing this level of funding from are set out in the programme reports that come to members. We can make sure that it's highlighted where there's external funding.
I mean, I think what would be really helpful is like just a schedule about. I'm not sure I'm maybe missing the point. It looks like John's just.
Obviously, this report talked about all the individual projects and obviously the individual amounts. A lot of these projects then go into the capital programme, which obviously you as members see and approve.
Yeah.
So as part of that, when you approve the capital budget at the beginning of the year for the programme for the next 3-4 years, one thing we do include in that report is the total programme and how it's funded. So of that programme, it says the overall capital programme is, say, 36 million. And of that, 19-20 million of that comes from external grants and contributions. I think that gives you probably the overall picture to say you're investing 36 million pounds in North Devon, but of that, the council are doing a fantastic job in terms of pulling down external funding for all of these schemes, which totals 18-19 million. So it's about half at the moment of that investment comes from external grants and contributions, which actually is a really good story because you're investing 35 million in North Devon, costing the council half of that, but actually you're getting a lot of external funding and grants that the team are working hard and continually trying to source. So you do get that in total. Obviously, this report breaks it down into a bit more detail, so you can see on the intricacies of each scheme how that's funded.
I think it is the intricacies of each scheme about how it's trying to get that balance, isn't it? Because the amount of additional work, which I suspect that I'm requesting, is perhaps out of proportion for what we get from it. But there is something about, some of those projects which are identified, we've had X million from wherever. That's actually fantastic to see and to have really clearly and transparently in a report that comes to this, which,
Are you saying you want to kind of break down? You mentioned one of the safer streets, 350,000. You're saying you want to see a breakdown of how exactly that money's been spent.
It isn't so much about the spending, it's about where it comes from for me. So if we've got a project of, project X, what is NVT's contribution and what comes from external? But that might be really officer heavy to do something like that.
So I think obviously when the projects come forward at the outset, you'll get the breakdown of funding within that. So obviously you as members will have a project coming forward. So Sarah J might be coming forward with projects, say like Future High Streets Fund, that says we're looking to invest £12 million in the town centre, but we've done really well to get £6.5 million worth of external funding, and we're asking members to approve the remainder. So you at the outset when the project is being formed, but also through the quarterly reporting when we bring the programmes, we can add to that programme information if you would like, how much of that project obviously then is how much budget is coming from the council, how much is external funding. So you'll get the quarterly reporting. We did start to include that on there, but then it was starting to get a bit too much in terms of detail. It depends on how much detail you want to see, Chair, I think.
I'm just saying, I mean, we've got this report here which gives a really good narrative, and there are some financial figures in there. Obviously, reporting is for me more about expenditure, I think, isn't it? Isn't it? So I'm not sure if what I'm suggesting is not clear, but it is we've got this report with all of this fantastic detail about, you know, what's going on and so on and so forth. And there are some allusions to, you know, we've got £1 million for the local authority housing fund, for example, you know, to buy some temporary housing. So it's like as an appendix. So this is a really useful thing because it brings it all together, so we can see the whole picture without having to go back to all sorts of reports and this report and that meeting and so on and so forth. But what this doesn't provide is for each of these projects, just like, well, have we got any external funding in? You know, even if there was just a line in this kind of report when it comes back to us, you know, just, you know, funding made up, you know, 90% council, 10% something of that ilk, so that we get an overall picture without having to go back to endless different reports.
So if I can bring Nina in, who looks after the programme management, obviously some of this is around reporting on the projects we've got within the programmes, and I think that, yeah, do you want to come in, Nina?
That's a nice suggestion, and I do think we've done it. So we currently, members have decided now to split out performance from the financials. So moving forward, I'm not sure if the first one's come to strategy and resources yet. Performance report for all of the programmes we've come first, and then the financials. So I'll ask the team to make sure that it's highlighted in the first column, the drawdown of funds for those projects.
Thank you, because it's a really, really good news story, and we should be, the more we can be transparent about that, both for councillors, but actually for any members of the public or out there.
I think what we've done, we've always smattered it through. So when we received it, it's come about and it's been reported.
Yeah.
But what you're asking for is a consistent, always to be there, and we can do that. That's fine.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you to all staff who've been involved in drawing down those considerable funds for all this fantastic work. Thank you. I'll be quiet.
Councillor Masco, Councillor Vicky Knight and Councillor Denton.
Forgotten what I was going to ask.
Well, have a think. Go to Vicky, Councillor Vicky Knight and come back on.
Oh, no, it's all right. I have remembered. Just going back to the Oliver buildings, I attended a Biosphere partnership meeting, I think last year. There was a really good presentation by Exeter University, and they've actually got a design for the Oliver building to turn it into a fantastic sort of STEM and environmental centre. I fear that the funding probably never materialised for that, but it did look fantastic and would have been a brilliant opportunity for Barnstaple. My question, thank you. I echo what everyone else has said about the report. It's really great. I'm just still really concerned about our small businesses. I think, you know, the town centre is a fantastic place. We lost another little business last week, the little Barnstaple Cupcakery closed down in Butchers Row, and they're really struggling, and I feel I would really love us to try and show them some support, some of the small businesses. I think they're struggling under the financial burden that the government is putting on them. You know, is there anything we as a council can do? Are we able to give any small business rates relief for a little independent, or can we possibly write a letter to the government expressing our concern at, you know, there's the amount of businesses that are closing, just trying to do something to support them, so that this town that we're building is still going to have these little shops at the end of the day.
Yeah, I can pick up the business rate. So small independents, if it's their only business, will get small business rate relief anyway. So providing they're not only more than one and their rateable value is below the threshold, then they should qualify for 100% rate relief anyway. Obviously, we do try and work closely with small businesses, with Butchers Row, Pannier Market, and even then obviously into Green Lane. So we do try and work with them to try and get tenants into those premises and help and support them in any way we can, whether that be with rent concessions, etc., to try and help them get set up. So there is lots of support and availability through Sarah Jane, through Hannah and the team, in terms of helping advice, grants they can apply for, is always sort of being passported out. So we'll continue to do that. Obviously, there's only so far we can go as a council, but everything that's in our gift, we will be trying to do.
Can I just answer that? Because I mean, I chair the Barnstaple Place Partnership, and I think it's been a huge amount of work that's gone on about supporting small businesses and understanding what the obstacles are, particularly to empty shops. And we had a meeting a few months ago where John Gay came along from Wrights Commercial and Tony Foster from Weathers, and we talked through lots of the barriers, and there's a huge amount of work going on. So, and out of that meeting came the initiative where we're offering free planning advice to owners of properties within the town centre to say, come and talk to us and we'll help you try to find a way to solve those barriers. And I just wanted to mention that there's a huge team behind SJ and behind Hannah that have done fantastic work here. And I think I wanted to mention Alison particularly, and I should declare my interest as a trustee of the Bridge Trust, shouldn't I? But, you know, an amazing job to get that funding too. So at a time of difficult development market and a difficult, tricky sort of retailing, I think we're back in the trend, and the town is full of life. And I'm intervening now because other people.
You're quite right.
But I just say how proud I am to have or to be the portfolio holder that's got such a fantastic team behind me, and they do make a huge difference. And there's other things in here that aren't mentioned. One of them, of course, is something dear to my heart, which is Derby Lace Factory in Barnsley, which is now brought back to life, thanks not to our money, but the way that our planners and us as a place team have helped them find the right solution and help the funding from central government to make it work as well in terms of the affordable housing. So there are this, you know, all around the town in really difficult times, there's lots of interventions that are making a difference, and I think we should be very proud of what we're doing.
No, you're quite right, Councillor President, and you know, there is a lot of work going on. There's no doubt about that. And the bottom line is with businesses, and it's so depressing to see when another one goes. It's like dominoes, and you know, it's some high streets across the country. Once one goes, it does lead to an area that nobody wants to open up there because they're shutting. But the bottom line in all of this is it's down to individuals like ourselves to stop shopping online. That's the biggest by far. Yes, business rates can be altered by government if they want to. They probably won't. But you know, if we don't use our local town centres, if we don't use them to buy things, then they're going to shut. I mean, they can't carry on if people aren't going in there. So we've got to do everything else that brings people into places like Barnstaple and get them shopping more. And there are still things ongoing, and that's the beauty of having Councillor Prowse's chairmanship, Barnstaple Place Partnership, and the ideas being looked at. I mean, one thing that I noticed going down around the country is you look at gateways into towns, you look at graffiti as you go into towns, and you look, when you get into towns, you look at how many are boarded up and how many are shut. And I think Barnstaple is not too bad compared to many others, but there's a lot of improvement still to be made. Yeah. And if we can carry on looking at things like the gateways into towns, because that's the first thing people see. And if it's depressing and covered with graffiti and boarded up houses, and it's not good, but let's carry on with the good work that Sarah Jane and her team have done and hope for even better things, because there is a lot of potential. Barnstaple's a great place. Let's not be like that. To have many people like me move down here because it is so good, and we've got to keep on pushing that positive message, but get people shopping in Barnstaple. And up to Christmas, let's make a commitment. Every councillor should make sure they spend some money in their local town centre, and not and let's stop Amazon. I can't say that, I don't think, but let's stop Amazon. I'll say it again. Sorry, I've spouted on there, but I feel quite strongly about it. It's Councillor David Knight, oh, Ricky Knight, sorry.
Jerry, you're welcome in my community, but talking as a Barnstaple born and bred bay, can I make some comments, please? And I repeat what Councillor Prowse has had to say with regard to Barnstaple and all the work that SJ and the TCM and Hannah have done economically. I'm no longer on Barnstaple Town Council, but I know just how much Barnstaple Town Council has been doing over the last 20 years to improve. And they've done wonders with regard to High Street, with bins and benches and planters, etc. They've nearly dealt with Maiden Arches. They're nearly succeeded with the theatre lane there. I don't know if you've ever walked down what theatre lane, but you take your life in your hands sometimes. I didn't say that. So interestingly for me, the walkway through Barnsley always started and finished on the high street. Then it sort of diverged a bit into Joy Street and Burgess Road. I'm really excited by what the Strand Riverside CIC have been doing. That area from Bridge Chambers with the 2 cafes there by the river, and that's another issue. So much potential what we could do in the river tour, but that's not necessarily a pipe dream, but it's certainly something that excites me, always has done in the Toronto Estuary Forum as well. But that dynamic, or whatever you call it, that pathway now is basically up Cross Street into the High Street, up Butchers Road to Backport Street and beyond. And that's a very interesting development and very exciting development. Part of the problem on the Strand remains, did I say Mike Deacon? Remains, is it the Bell Hotel as was? Step in and help me there. Anyway, the big Nobel Hotel and the old cinema, which in a way that's just raw potential. I mean, very difficult to move on that. Whatever. I know that there's a couple of questions coming up somewhere. Subtly, I know I have to ask questions. I'm on planning. So this, I'm so aware of all that's been done to try and deal with the boarded up empty shops. I know Hannah's always trying to find a different way of somehow making them more attractive visually as you walk by. The two things I'd like though, well, it's actually 3, but anyway, 2 things I'd like if it's been in my brief to ask of it, but you ask of something, I'd like to ask of something. If only we could get, forgotten what they're called now, those vehicles with ladders that go up the roofs. Cherry picker, thank you. If only we get cherry picker for a couple of days, if not longer, to go and deal with the guttering on the high street. I mean, I don't know about you, but I often look at the facades. I'm that sad. My wife counts me for it, but I'm always looking up as opposed to down. I'm looking for ways of somehow trying to get areas above shops to be inhabited by people as opposed to just boarded up storage. But I know we're all agreed on that as well. But beyond that, forget the pigeons and what they drop, but the amount of gutterings that are really bad, covered in weeds and cascading water and bad weather. I think that would be a really great PR investment. The other thing, oh yes, I wanted to mention from the last climate action team meeting, I wanted to mention this Exeter Science Centre, which is looking, yes, which is looking at some sort of support. Well, it's getting support from NDC, and I wondered if that could be in the report as well. The way in which we can support the Exeter Science Centre having a satellite space here, maybe in the Oliver Building. Who knows? Yeah, there were 1 or 2 others, but I said my comments and nearly made a question. So thank you.
Should I come back? Yes. So yeah, we're continuing to work with Exeter Science Centre, which focuses after happening with and that's really proactive work that we're doing with them, and they have got lots of exciting initiatives. They're currently looking at a temporary space in the town, which is what we're working with them on presently. We'll take some of the ideas that you talked about, which we have looked at before, but we'll look at again, and we'll take those to Barnstable Place Partnership. I think is the best way to do that. Just touching on the point that Councillor Maskell raised about business rates, I think it is worth stressing that is something at a local level we have very little control over. It's different when we own our own assets, which is why we're able to be more flexible when it comes to Butchers Row and Green Lanes. But I do think it's important that the public recognise that, because on social media you'll often see business rates, but it's just something that we can't control. I echo everything that Councillor Thompson said. I think we all do need to be talking positively about the town and encouraging people to shop locally. in terms of small businesses, Councillor Maskell, if you're aware of particular businesses, it is worth making them aware of North Devon Plus and the services that they offer, which is a company that obviously we part own, because they do offer advice to small businesses, which can be really helpful. And the other thing I just wanted to say is, whilst thank you for the plaudits, this is both across council piece of work, but also that is being dealt with is with collaboration. Barnstaple Town Council are working really closely with us and all of the partners on the Safe Partnership Board. So I just wanted to make that point. I might have written the report, but there is an awful lot of work going on.
Well, there's a couple of other councillors, but going back to Councillor Ricky Knight's point, which is a pertinent one, about if you do go around Barnstaple, you look up for some beautiful buildings spoilt by the overhangs and the droppings, which we don't own them. To pick her up High Street would be a great idea, but obviously we'd have to get permission, and then. But is there any enforcement we can do? Because it must be a dangerous thing. The amount of weight, and it just needs a massive downpour. If that crashes on someone's head,
Yes.
is there something we can do that
So
way?
there's 2 points. Yes, the first one is section 215 notices that we can serve, and it's referenced in the report in one of the tables. So we're tackling them on kind of a worse base at the moment. So and Hannah and the team have written to those businesses to ask them to do that work. We have specifically looked at a cherry picker before, but there are 2 issues with that. First is getting the permission of the business owner and an insurance related issue, but it's something we will have another look at, but that's been the barriers before to be able to do it. If we do something to another person's building and something happens, then it's where that responsibility lies. But we have got some regulatory powers, and you are working on that, aren't you, with the team?
Okay, thanks. Councillor David Knight, Councillor Caroline Lever, Councillor Peter.
Just coming back to this report, and I think what Councillor Lever was trying to get to was, I think the word that was missing was summary. I think the public, if they had, a page that summarises where this funding comes from and how successful this council has been in getting that funding alongside these projects, I think that's a very simple way that the public can actually get to that information, because as pointed out by officers, there are lots of other reports and those figures are kind of buried in a big weighty report, whereas if we come here and we have a quarterly report or whatever, and there's a summary of these are the projects that are ongoing and this is the funding that we've won as council, councillors and officers, I think that provides the public with a very simple way of accessing that information.
And as you said, Chair, obviously through the programme reporting, we can provide that, and also the finance performance report you get does give you that total number and says capital programme is this and how much is external funding. So you will get it in both quarters now.
Thank you, Councillor Caroline Lever.
Thank you, Councillor David Knight, for explaining far more succinctly what I really appreciate that assistance. I was actually going to come back to the business rates point about, government sets that and we just have to deal with it, apart from our own properties that we own. And I'm just thinking, after this meeting, I'm off to one of my other things I do is work with the LGA on various different things, and I'm off to a devolution subgroup where we're looking at what the LGA response to the bill that's coming out is, and I'm wondering whether we should be exploring within there devolving powers to local councils to set their own local business rates, whether that's something which has been considered, whether that's something that we should be suggesting to give local councils that flexibility.
It's not been, obviously the business rate system is a national scheme. We have some local discretion in terms of our discretionary rate relief policies. But at the moment, the existing parameters are it's a national scheme. So unless government change those parameters and allow councils to set taxes locally, whether that be obviously for business rates, then at the moment there's nothing planned in the current reform of business rates that's coming out as part of this year's settlement.
Yeah, so forgive me, Chair, just to come back. The work that we're doing at the LGA is actually about seeking to influence government and the bill that's coming through. So the voice of councils in terms of, actually, this could be a useful thing for us to have that power devolved. So it's not just national, but there is more local decision making on that.
Yeah, and also there is a local element to the scheme because there is that retention of business rates that we currently get to keep. But again, if you're seeking to inform future government policy, then again, there is something for the future. There's nothing planned at the moment.
Yes, so again, I'm really sorry to labour the point. It is about whether it would be useful to have that flexibility in the future, irrelevant of what is planned or not planned.
Again, it depends until you start to see the nuances of what that would look like. It's very hard to comment without actually seeing the context as to what that would be.
So
How that would change the existing business rate mechanism that's in place. It's hard to comment without seeing any detail.
Thanks to free.
Thanks very much. I mean, Barnstaple Town Centre has, it seems to have a huge amount of footfall. And I'd echo what everyone else has said about the work that we're doing along with other partners. But it's worth remembering that thriving town centres happen in places where there's a successful wider economy, where there's more disposable income, and where people have time and the money to shop in and to go out in town centres. The work that's being done in the town centre really does tie into the work that we're doing about economic development in the wider district, and I think we probably all ought to remember that, and that'll benefit not only Barnstaple Town Centre but Ilfracombe and South Melton and Broughton and wherever. What this gives us in summary is a really good news story that I went on Saturday afternoon, went around just chatting to shopkeepers in small businesses in Barnstaple. And I think the message isn't really out there about the amount that we and our partners are doing in the town centre. And I'm just wondering if there's a way of publicising this. I know that there's a lot goes on social media about what's happening in town, but just in terms of the work that's going on in the background by the district and the town council and other agencies. And finally, just a plug for the Food Fest in the Panmure Market, weekend after next, where all of the Lever families' Christmas presents will be bought and have years and years and years.
Some of the free drinks at time.
Yes, and I'd like to just move to note this report.
Second.
I know Hannah Harrington's here and she's going to speak on the next one, but I don't know if there's anything before we move to accept. Is there anything you want to add, Hannah, or are you okay just to leave it for now?
I think thank you members for all your comments. I think there is a huge amount of work happening. I think you are right, Barnstable's a fantastic place. We've got a huge amount to offer. When you look at footfall figures, actually our footfall is really healthy. We can't make people spend money. That ultimately that's, but we can do all those things to make it a great experience to come into town. Like you say, it is tough out there for small businesses, but actually we are, compared to other places, we are doing okay. And we just have to continue to support. And some of those projects, which I know are really visible, the things like the empty shops, we are working hard. It is long and hard to work with landlords, especially when they're not local. All of those conversations, they're trying to get buildings clean, even just cleaned. So, we are trying. It is it's a long process and it is frustrating for everybody. But we are aware of, those small things that would make a real kind of visible difference to people when they come into town. So please be assured, we are trying our best.
Yeah, thank you. It's been moved to note the report. All those in favour? Carry Jane for that. Item 8 is street market scheme.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. So you've got a report in front of you around our street marshal scheme. I think you will all be very aware of the street marshal scheme that we have had in place in North Devon for a number of years now. And the purpose of this report is that contract comes to an end on the 31st of December. So really the purpose of today is to look at whether members want to continue that service, what that level might be, and to look at hopefully an approval of perhaps a further year, but at what level is what we will discuss. So like I say, I think you're all very aware of the scheme. We've had it in place since we won Safer Streets funding in 2023, which is alluded to in the previous report. The scheme has remained the same throughout that time, but really it is about that visible presence in the town centre of a team of people that are there just to make people feel safer, to deal with ASB, to deal with medical incidents, and they have a really positive impact on people, both visiting the town and businesses as well. So in the last few years, North Devon Council has put a lot of that funding in. We have had funding come through at various different stages. Barnstaple was eligible for some police hotspot funding in the last year. That was just Barnstaple that was eligible, but what that enabled us to do was to use some of our North Devon Council funding to extend the scheme into Ilfracombe. So the scheme currently runs 7 days a week in Barnstaple, 2 days a week in Ilfracombe. So going forward, looking particularly at the funding, you've got in front of you there kind of various stats about the ASB levels at the moment, and also that kind of contribution that the street marshals are making. But I think in terms of looking forward, we haven't had any confirmation from the Police Crime Commission or the Home Office whether there will be any future hotspot funding available. We are constantly looking for other funding streams, but at the moment that does come to an end in March. What we have been doing is having conversations with our town council partners. We have secured some money from Barnstaple Town Council. You'll see in 4.13 that is set out. There is a further contribution promised on the basis that we're continuing to provide that 7 day a week service. And similarly, Ilfracombe Town Council have also agreed to contribute, but they would like to see that 2 days a week continued in Ilfracombe. The resource implications are set out for you in section 5, and you have the breakdown there. You have the kind of the costs for continuing the service as is, and then obviously if you wanted to consider a slightly reduced service. Really, members, that is there for you to debate, and then you have the recommendations set out in section 2.
Thank you, Hannah. We'll take questions and comments, and then we've got to basically decide if marshals a good thing and how the good thing we want to carry on with it. It's the level of service that we're going to make a decision on today. Councillor Prumaskell and then Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I absolutely support going with this. Yeah, I think it's made a huge difference. I've noticed it. I've got friends and relatives who work around the town centre, and they definitely feel the benefit of it. I had an incident where I was concerned about the welfare of a young girl who was drunk and by the library recently, and I went into the library and they called the street marshals who came, and they were absolutely brilliant, and it's just really nice having that there, and I would imagine that Ilfracombe needs it too. You know, wouldn't it be lovely to give them 7 days a week? But yeah, I think I would absolutely support anything we can to try and finance. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, I really do rate the street marshal scheme. I think it's superb, and the difference it makes in the safety within our towns is clear to be seen. The point, though, that I've made in previous debates on this matter is I'm very keen for there to be a flexibility there, to not just be concentrated on Barnstaple and Ilfracombe. You know, I'm talking in my own ward, and certainly in the ward of Councillor Nassels, that during the summer season we have as many people as Ilfracombe in Woolacombe, and the problems exist, and presence of street marshals would be a great asset to the tourism industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did always build that flexibility into the contract that, you know, should there be a hotspot developed. I will be honest in that we didn't get that request this summer just gone, but that flexibility is written into the contract that, you know, it is demand and kind of needs space. So should there be a hotspot developed, and, you know, it might not just be the street marshals, it might be the wider team and our own ASB officers, but
that flexibility is built in, that we can respond to a hotspot should it.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Hannah, but it just wasn't, it wasn't in the report.
Yeah, no.
But I'm just making.
Yeah, no, fully aware of that. And I, would suggest, people do have to report ASB. One of the big issues around ASB is the under-reporting of it. So, in all your parishes, if ASB occurs, it needs to be reported, and so that, we can then respond to that demand.
Maybe we get a better behaved set of people in one of them.
They're a lot older.
Thank you.
Sorry, if there were to be a hotspot developed, I know in Braunton a while back there was a little pocket of problems going on, and the police said that the people involved were actually coming out of Barnstable because of the street marshals and looking for elsewhere to sort of hang out. If that happens, is it the police that request it, or would it be like the parish council to request?
So it would be best reported to the North Devon Council's antisocial behaviour officer, which is Kate Morn. So I would suggest ASB really is a responsibility of district council. Obviously, there's a police role as well, but if it is kind of pure ASB, report that to our officer, and then that data will come through to us.
Anna, can I ask about times that they work in the street marshals? I know this was before, because they did change it a little bit, because I can't remember whether they were saying, well, there was nothing they were doing between like 9 and 10. I can't remember it was that. And they wanted, or businesses, I can't remember which one it was, wanted them to extend it because they were shutting at 5, or stopping at 5, and people wanted to extend to 6. I can't remember, but has work been done on that?
Yeah, so the core hours that we set out are 10 to 5, but actually all that in the contract it's 7 hours, so we varied that. So we had a spike of youth ASB a few months along, and actually when they were really causing issues was between the 5 and 7 o'clock. So we just varied the shift patterns and to kind of combat that, and actually that particular issue seems to have sorted itself out, so they've reverted a little bit. At the same time, the street drinkers get quite canny about when they know that actually they're starting. So we've also, they were starting at 10. We've done a few earlier shifts, so they've actually started at 9 o'clock. So, again, that flexibility is there, and we've kind of reacted as and when needed. But the core hours, tend to be 10 till 5.
Right. And as far as days are concerned, because that's what we've been asked for here, I'd have thought that Saturday would be the busiest. Might be wrong, but Sunday, how does Sunday compare with Monday to Saturday in Barnstable Town Centre for street marshals?
So interestingly, I would actually say Saturday isn't the busiest day. Mostly of what they are dealing with is around street drinking, and it doesn't really have a pattern to it in lots of ways. And in some ways that is quieter when there are more people around. So actually on a Sunday, quite often find they are dealing with a lot. It also tends to be a day, dare I say, where there are potentially less police resources, or our officers aren't around. So actually quite often they are dealing with our CCTV operators and quite a lot on a Sunday, and less supported potentially by other authorities. It's very hard to put a pattern on it. There's a list around, but it is difficult to.
Any other response from Beth? No wonder members couldn't get in last week when they tried on those things.
I think I just want to echo what other people have said, and actually how helpful to our town centre, to businesses, to residents, and all of us, visitors too, the street marshal programme is. I would like to, so I'm just now but I'd like to suggest that we continue with the existing levels of service. If it's possible to move that as a motion, can I do that, please?
Yeah, I'm just looking. I don't know whether you want to talk us through this, Anna, but the recommendations 2 on page 39.
Yeah.
And then we've also got the detail of that on page 44, which is 5.2, 5.3, 5.4, 5.5. So I think it's within the recommendation. If Councillor Lever moves that we keep the existing level of service i.e. 7 days a week, 2 days a week in Ilfracombe. And the balance of funding required for that is 74,000.
Yeah.
That would be enough if we wanted to carry on. So is there a seconder to that, Councillor Maskell? All those in favour of that? Anybody against? Is that, can we accept that's done then?
Yeah, Chair, so you've got 4 recommendations, obviously.
Change it on.
Yeah. Fine, not to, Chair. Obviously, 2.1 obviously just sets out that you're waiving contract procedure rules in terms of entering into that new contract. So that would stay as it is. 2.2 obviously was that you consider that the street marshal division you wish to continue. So that's where obviously you're adding your new recommendation now, but having considered that, you're now obviously recommending the continuation of the existing level of provision of 7 days a week in Barnstable and 2 days a week in Ilfracombe.
2 days.
I say 2 days a week.
2 days.
2 days a week in Ilfracombe. And then 2.3 obviously was subject to approval of what you've just approved in 2.1 and 2.2, but that be funded as set out in section 5 of the report, which is coming from those reserves and the external funding contributions. So 2.3 is absolutely fine, so it is. And likewise 2.4, the quality impact assessment as summarised. So the only one that you're amending is 2.2 to confirm the choice that you're extending it to the existing arrangements.
That's exactly what I meant to say.
So do we have to accept those
You do need to download
the recommendation again with the change
with
to
the change, and then obviously you seek.
Okay, can we have a movement for that then, please, to change that? I think Councillor Maskell will second, and we'll all vote in favour of those recommendations now amended.
Sorry, that wasn't clear first time.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hannah. And I think it's probably worthwhile asking. I don't know how many street marshals there are in total in the Barnstable Ilfracombe.
So there's a team of 6, so a core team of 3, but
Well, you could pass on our thanks to the work they're doing, because hopefully the work will get less, because a lot of it is to do with people knowing they're there, the self-satisfaction of them being there, and the sense of security, rather than actually doing something. But if you pass on this committee's thanks anyway.
I will do. Thank you very much.
Item 9, Sarah James.
Yeah.
Sarah James is the cat market, which is.
Thank you, Chair. Members, in February 22, North Devon Council closed Limbrish Car Park on the grounds. You might recall a report that subsequently came to this committee in April 2022, where we presented a number of options to you on what we should do with that car park going forward. Members at that time resolved to progress with what was identified as option 4 in that report, which was to offer the car park to Linton Limerick Town Council or the residents, but ensure that the councils and residents were aware of the associated risk when doing so. That offer was made, and whilst we had had intermittent contact from Linton Limerick Town Council, a solution can't be found in that regard in terms of transferring the land. And as such, I need to bring this matter back to you. As you'll appreciate, our engineers have been monitoring this, the car park, since 2022, and as set out in paragraph 4.3 to you, the engineers re-inspected in August 25 and noted that its condition of continuing period. I'll read what's here, but they viewed the structure from the surface and from across the river as the access point is now too dangerous and overgrown for them to safely enter the underneath space. But they were able to see that the slope on which the structure stands is now appearing to wash out and material sliding down the slope. In the view of our engineers, demolition of the structure continues to be the preferred option, particularly now that we have confirmation that neither the residents nor the town council wish to take it on. There is potential for further failure of the structure, And so it is recommended that the engineering team are now enabled to work up a solution that both makes the entire area safe and in the most cost-effective way. So what we're asking for members now in the recommendation is that the car park is permanently decommissioned, and that the exact nature of that is delegated to myself to ensure the optimum solution is found that keeps the entire area safe but minimises the cost to ourselves. The engineer is here if you've got any technical questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah Jane. It says at the end 12 about people being consulted. I mean, presumably John Petrinos is in favour of.
Yes, absolutely. He's unable to make it today, but yeah, he was.
Yeah, Joe, he's been in contact with me a bit, and I was going to suggest that we add him in with SJ's delegation so that he understands the process as it goes along. I just think that's important for him. Because it's a thorny subject, I don't think there's any option here. It's a shame. It is a shame because it's obviously been very valuable for the local residents over the years. And it built, I think, built after the flood, wasn't it, back in 1952? So, but I don't think we've got any option. We were hopeful that the town council might be able to bridge it and find a solution, but not been forthcoming.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I completely agree with Councillor Price that, you know, it's a sad day when, you know, we're in a position where this particular facility, let's call that, has got to a state, and I believe where it is no longer safe, and the recommendation is basically just to hold our hands up and say, actually, we do not have the money to, nor are we ever likely to have the money to completely start again from scratch. So safety of residents and visitors has got to come first, and indeed of anyone working on this kind of site. So I would like to actually move the recommendation as set out in the report.
Yeah, thank you. We've got a seconder for that.
This is not option 2, yes?
Unless you want, yeah, this is to recommendation to decommission it permanently.
Yeah.
Oh, I see, option 2, yeah, okay.
Chair, could I just say, is that recommendation obviously amended obviously with Councillor Petrinos being in petition?
That sounds entirely sensible.
So do you want to just
Shall I reiterate that?
please, Karen?
Okay, I'd like to move the recommendation as set out in the report, particularly that the delegation is to Sarah Jane as, I'm afraid I can't remember what your title is. Head of Place Property and Regeneration in consultation with the local member, Councillor Petrinos.
Has been proposed and seconded by Councillor Peter Lever. All those in favour of that proposal? Thank you. Carried. Thank you, Sarah Jane. Item 10. Coombe Harbour Sea Pool. Georgina.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to present that one if that's okay, Chair.
That's fine.
You're
trying to have them last week. In the quiz, I passed it.
You did pass the quiz, that's so good.
Extra city, really.
Yeah, I do have Georgina, the Harbour Master, with me today. Obviously, if there are any technical questions, then obviously in relation to the current operation of the harbour, then Georgina is here. And also I have Darryl Liss-Johns, who's our Environmental Health Manager, who's also responsible for health and safety. Because as you'll consider in the report, there are some risks in health and safety that need to be considered in terms of determining where you want to move with this one. So members, I'm going to refer obviously to the report that's on your papers. You'll also have seen an addendum that was added to your Modern Gov this morning, which included some internal health and safety advice as well for the report. That was added as an additional document, and I will refer to the detail in that. I'll also refer to some photos that are in your report. But just in terms of location, it's worth going to page 69 just so that all members understand exactly where we're talking about today. We've got the pier car park. At the very end of pier car park, you have Verity. And then behind that, you've got the area that's shown on page 69, which just sets out East Face, which is where the harbour goes round to. And then an area which is where the seaport is obviously being discussed today. Members may also recall this report coming to them back in June 23, or some members may. And members initially gave approval to proceed with a CPOR, recommending the use of some funding, which had about £25,000 funding, some from this council, majority from Devon County Council. Since then, further in-depth work has been done in terms of looking at the health and safety risks associated with the current location and also the future operation of such a CPOR. And that cost has now increased, and also the risks that have come forwards obviously have increased as well in terms of further in-depth work that's been done. Members may also recall an incident in August 23 where a young girl was swept into the sea. A link to that is shown in your papers on page 104. But it just shows the territory that we're dealing with here in terms of the risks that are potentially there for operators and users of this area. And on a daily basis, the Harbour Master has had to deal, or continues to deal with, frequent occurrences of youngsters and tombstoners jumping into the harbour as well. So it's quite an environment that is obviously currently having to be managed carefully anyway. And obviously the proposal of a CPOR obviously adds to that context. And it's important that members fully understand the risks associated that are set out in the report. Officers have raised significant concerns about the proposed CPOR, and that's within the health and safety side, and also throughout the people who've been engaged within this report, and have highlighted those risks to us, and it's important that that is cascaded to you as members. In terms of the areas we need to consider throughout the reports, this is around the hazards that are currently there. The area has got rocks that are covered by water when the water is in, and then can be fully seen when the water goes out. The profile of the potential CPOR around water depth, actually. Also responsibilities ongoing around quality of water. And also the question around should such a CPOR be lifeguarded as well in terms of mitigating any potential risks. That all comes with costs and associated costs up front, and also ongoing costs as well, which members need to consider. In order to look into that in more depth, the team have engaged externally with legal advice that is set out in Part B of this report, because there's detailed legal advice that's been provided as part of the consultation and the evidence behind the report, and also the Royal Life Saving Society, which is referred to in the report as the RLSS. In addition to that, our internal health and safety team, headed up by Darryl, has also looked into the proposal, and I will refer to the findings from their report as well as I run through the detail. So that just covers off the context in terms of what we're looking at here. In terms of the recommendations that are in front of you, there are a number of recommendations. Under 2.5, it sets out that members need to decide, having considered what I will run through shortly, whether to the area to remain as it does presently, i.e. do not have a CPOR there, but obviously there are identified hazards and we need to make sure that they are mitigated as far as the authority is responsible for, or to open the CPOR either to permitted groups or to the general public. Now, each of those has challenges, because if you limit it to permitted groups, how do you then control the general public accessing the pool, whilst those groups are in there, or whilst those groups are not in there? And that obviously comes with considerable risks once you then open it up to becoming an operated CPOR. So those considerations will be brought out shortly as we go through the report. The lengthy assessment by the Royal Life Saving Society has been provided, and that report is shown in your appendices. Likewise, in Part B, the detailed legal advice from Bevan Britton is also provided in terms of what our requirements are legally as an operator and also under health and safety. In terms of the benefits of having a CPOR, which were alluded to in the original report back in 2023, they're set out within section 4.6 and talks around Blue Marine, the marine sport and the tourism benefits. So I'll take it that you've read those, so I won't go into those in any detail. The legal position is set out, as I've alluded to, in Part B, and that talks about whether the pool is open to either organisations and groups or the general public, the council does have a duty to ensure, as far as reasonably practical, that they don't expose those users to any unforeseen risks to health and safety. We have to take reasonable steps to protect its visitors from any hazard that we're aware of, or of which it would be aware of if it had taken reasonable steps to monitor the area. There's no duty to safeguard or warn irresponsible visitors against dangers which are perfectly obvious to adults of full capacity who willingly choose to undertake. However, it is clearly recognised that there could be people who want to use that pool who don't have that capacity, or likewise could be children, and therefore we need to recognise that in terms of the risks that are associated. We can't guarantee that people would be going in there who have that capacity or are part of organised groups. And it comes back to that point I alluded to earlier in terms of how can we control that environment, because it is a working harbour. We can't shut that area off, and therefore any controls or measures that were put in place need to make sure that those risks are fully mitigated. We'll come on to those a little bit later. There is health and safety guidance, and health and safety guidance note 179 does touch on the area around the profile of potential sea pool and also lifeguarding. And our technical advisors are here if you want to go into any technical detail, but I can assure you I won't be going into that level of technical detail myself. But the importance is making sure that you're fully aware of the potential requirements of the council to make sure that we put appropriate measures in place if we are going to operate such a sea pool. The Royal Life Saving Society recommended that only structured organised groups use the tidal pool. They did not recommend the use of general public, mainly due to the hazards that are currently there. As you can see in the photographs in pages 77 ongoing, you can see the areas that I refer to in terms of the potential hazards. There are underwater obstacles, obviously do get covered when the water is at full, but as that water alludes, obviously you can then see the level and differences within those underwater obstacles. And also there are entrapment risks as well in terms of some of the obstacles that have been left there. Some of the material in there is from when the harbour was reconfigured and built a number of years ago. So there is a lot of loose material in there as well, uneven rocks and also metal debris. The challenge we have is that it is a working harbour and that area forms part of it. We can't just close it off. We also would need to consider, if you did put lifeguard provision in place, could those lifeguards clearly have visibility of the whole sea pool? And having had discussions with the harbour master, that can't happen. There are areas that are obscured down there as well. So there is a challenge around, if you did decide to want to proceed and put lifeguarding in place, it's not as straightforward as it would seem, different to a swimming pool. Therefore, you would have challenges in terms of where lifeguards could be placed. And therefore, we would need to obviously make sure that it is safeguarded to that degree. The RLSS did go on to talking about obviously permitted groups, but actually that it could be opened up if the risk assessment showed that the removal of the underwater structures could take place, that you could standardise the water depth, and also that you could install accessible entry and exit points. The guidance that's also in place by Health and Safety Executive, Health and Safety Guidance, has been reviewed by our internal health and safety team. That recommendation and guidance does talk about the need for having lifeguards, and that came through in the advice that we had from the internal health and safety team, and they felt strongly about that. That would obviously mitigate the challenge to a certain degree, but then how do you police that outside of those lifeguard times in terms of when the lifeguards aren't there, because we can't close that area off fully without obviously impacting the working practice of the harbour. So there are some quite significant challenges to consider, members. Life saving obviously is obviously right up there in terms of one of those considerations and those requirements. And as I've alluded to, Health and Safety Guidance 179 does cover that, and that is set out in your report and also in the addendum that the Health and Safety team have provided. Even if an organised group was in there and that was covered by the organisation group risk assessment for the operation that they're taking place in, i.e. a diving organisation, that wouldn't necessarily require lifeguard. We can't protect then other users going into the sea pool at that same time or outside of those times. So that does come at a cost, and also a challenge to locate where reasonably practical they can actually see that whole pool area. The internal health and safety review that Darren and the team have undertaken has been added onto your agenda papers, and I'll just cover off some of the key points that were raised in that review. It talked about obviously the obstacles in the pool currently, that they're not visible when the tide is high, and that the pool, when the pool is full, people could jump into the pool, and that could pose an entrapment risk. Those submerged obstacles may not be obvious to those entering the pool. The recommendation in the report does recommend those obstacles be removed. The report looks at those key considerations around hazards, should the sea pool be permanently flooded or emptied, and also the profile of the pool in terms of that irregular natural bottom that you would expect in a normal swimming pool. The considerations to consider around each of the recommendations, obviously option 1, which is around the sea pool being open for general public, that obviously goes against the advice from the Royal Saving Life, RSLL for short. They don't recommend it being used by the general public due to those hazards, but obviously that you could remove those hazards, and then obviously the recommendation from the legal advisors was that the Royal Life Saving Society should review their report in light of that. But wider than that is the health and safety guidance 179, which is around, do we need to have competent people there in terms of lifeguarding? The initial view from the team was that yes, that would need to be in place to fully mitigate those concerns, but that does come obviously at a cost. And as I've alluded to, you can't then protect the area outside of that time when lifeguards are there. And bearing in mind some of the challenges I've already alluded to that the harbour master has to deal with, the dangers associated with people wanting to jump into the harbour, they probably would avoid those times when lifeguards are there anyway, because obviously of the rationale as to why they're wanting to carry out the activities that they do. So it does provide quite a concern for officers around such an operation, and can we do everything in our powers to be able to mitigate that appropriately. There are other pools available in the area. Obviously, we do have a swimming pool in Ilfracombe, and obviously cold water swimming can take place on the other side of the water by the Water Sports Centre. There are other pools in North Devon and also in Cornwall, such as Bude and Westford Hoe. Obviously, they don't have lifeguards at the Westford Hoe one. Bude, I think, do.
No, just the trustees are there as a presence, but there is RNLI on Summerlees Beach. Yeah.
So obviously the consideration then is around could it be managed by just having organised groups, which is your sort of second item in your recommendations. And again, the team feel that we can't exclusively protect just those groups because other users may want to access the sea pool as well. So on both operating either under just groups, or if you wanted to go wider in terms of that public access, the view from the health and safety team is that we would need to have competent lifeguards in place, which obviously does come at quite a considerable cost, on top of the cost obviously of carrying out those works because of the challenge of the location, and it's a working harbour, and to ensure sufficient lifeguard coverage to the degree that it would be needed, because they need to be located and be within I think it's 20 seconds.
Yeah, they need to be able to rescue within 20 seconds.
Thanks, Carl.
Yeah.
So members, obviously there are cost considerations around if you did want to proceed with sea pool. They are set out in your agenda papers. They are set out in section 7 of your report. They increased quite considerably from the original report that came to you back in 2023, which was set at around 25,000. The cost in terms of mitigating some of those risks in terms of the harbour infrastructure has increased to around 120,000. So that's gone up quite considerably. You would need to borrow to amend the capital programme if you wanted to carry out those works. That would cost you around about 12,000 a year in terms of borrowing costs. In addition to that, then is the consideration around making sure you've got appropriate cover for lifeguards in the event that it's opened either to groups or to wider individuals. And obviously that would need to be mapped out in terms of what that potentially would cost. But even if you had a lifeguard, one lifeguard for a year, you're probably looking at a cost of around about 30,000, including all the appropriate costs. You may need more than one lifeguard, depending on timings and busyness, etc. So potentially that cost on top of the borrowing cost would take you up to 50 to 60,000 pounds per year. So it does come at quite a considerable cost. There obviously are some heightened risks there that obviously we tried to bring out within the report. And obviously the other alternative option is to not proceed with the sequel, but obviously that doesn't take away those risks that are currently there. And therefore the team would need to carry out some associated works and improve some of the mitigation factors around appropriate signage, warning of dangers, warning of not swimming in the harbour. There are bylaws already in place that prohibit swimming in the harbour, but that doesn't stop people currently jumping in. And that's proved very hard to police over the last few years. Even when we had an additional PCSO from a maritime perspective down there, we couldn't police the harbour with the PCSO there either. That didn't stop people going in. So there would be a responsibility to ensure that we've got appropriate clear signage that prohibits that danger to life risk that's already there if you chose the option to even continue as you do currently. Chair, I think that covers off the sort of the key points. Obviously, I know members would have had a chance to read the report already. I do have Georgina and Darryl here if you have any technical questions. The legal advice in full is in part B, but obviously if you have questions around some of that legal advice and it's more context and high level, we can cover that off in part A. But if you want to delve into the detail legal advice, we may need to move into part B. So we just need to consider that when members are thinking about their questions that they may have. The recommendations are set out in your report. The main one to really consider is, having considered those risks and the things that I have touched on, is to consider whether you want to stay as you are at the moment with those appropriate measures in place, or to consider then the resolution that you originally made to open the C4 to some degree, but obviously aware of those considerations that we touched on.
Yeah, thanks, John.
That's easy one for you, Chair.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. This I see as a really, really important scheme. Potentially, it's got a massive amount of good that could be done down at Ilfracombe in the harbour. In particular, with the excellent work that George is doing with the Sea School at the moment, as a facility for training for Sea School, for the Sub-Aqua, for various other organisations. I think the potential is enormous, but I fully appreciate the difficulties here now to open it to Joe Public. Unfortunately, people can't behave. Most people do, but not all don't. And I mean, already, and it's not just at Ilfracombe, we have the problem with people jumping off piers and tombstoning and whatever. And you can't guarantee for people's behaviour, and you cannot police that all the time. It's just nonsensical. I mean, we mentioned the various pools that are locally in our area, not the swimming pools. I'm talking the open pools, like at Bude and like at Westwood House. But they have, as John said, they have the great advantage of being able to walk in and walk up to knee depth and beyond. Here you can't. Straight in or nothing. I know the condition of the seabed there is full of all the debris and whatever of the previous pier. So there's a lot of problems down there. I would have thought that would have been a great asset for something like the Sea School and the Sub-Aqua, you know, to do their training. But clearly, it's not for the public. I really appreciate the extent that the health and safety reports have been done, not just with the Royal Life Saving Society, but also with Bevan Britain and with indeed the Biosphere, who said they come and do the water bathing quality reports on it, which, you know, is great. Those things are in place, that I do have a genuine concern, unfortunately, about opening it up for use by the public. But I would love to see it go ahead in some form for registered groups. Very strong sub-aqua club. As I mentioned, very, very strong sea school, which is emerging and getting better and better and better all the time. That's my opinion on it, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkinson. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Leland?
Yeah, thank you. A very comprehensive report. I must admit, and it's me probably not reading it closely enough, but what's the if we kept the pool open for the group use and put all the warning signs up, is that something that is a possibility, or is it all or nothing?
If I may, Chair, it's so hard to differentiate between an organised group and the general public. So I did actually look into that, keep it as it is, and then ban the public. It's only for organised groups. But after the Bevan Bittman report, you still have an underlying obligation to mitigate the risk as far as practicable to whoever goes in there, knowing that people will go in there. So we're still looking at that fundamental higher cost rate of doing any works. I can't see how we can actually, as John has alluded to, police the groups as opposed to public. We can't stop the public going in. So in my personal opinion, it's either open to the public and all that entails, or unfortunately, we don't open it to anybody.
Just to add, Chair, I think let me just ask, bring in Councillor Ricky now. John, on that.
Well, it's really ironic because when I looked at 2.5 on page 60, I find all three options extremely difficult to differentiate between. I love open water swimming and deep diving and tombstoning. That's just my bent. I love the pool at Westwood Ho. But having heard the conflicting comments, the comments, I wasn't really. I bowed to the ward member, obviously, because I was unaware of the sub-aqua club and the attraction of that to them and this cadet school, the sailing cadet school. But now I do. So, in other words, the first option, yes, I can see the reasons for that. Opening the sea pool to the general public, I'd love that most of all, but I'm totally aware of now the investment of over £100,000 to make that possible. And then I looked at until I heard that last comment, sorry, I can't see you, and then the idea of advertising the hazards, danger to life, very, very clearly. Do not dive in here, do not enter. It's not going to work. It's people being people. In other words, I'm saying I'm finding great difficulty making my mind up. Yeah, we have to.
I know, but I'm guessing as well. But as I understand it, we're not looking at making. If we say this isn't going to be available for use, as I understand it, we're not looking at making physical changes to the obstacles that there are. Is that right? We're talking about putting some signage up. Is that, have I misunderstood that?
Anyway,
We would have to do it anyway. Obviously, the dangers that are already there in terms of the entrapment risks, we would have to carry out those works, even if we were going to open it up to permitted groups.
Okay.
So that considerable work would still need to take place. There would also be ladders, etc., put on the side so that people have accessibility in terms of getting in, getting out, even if it was just permitted groups. The challenge we have then, though, is obviously because you're then adding ladders, you've cleared the space, but you're only allowing it for permitted groups, even if the sign says permitted groups only, everyone else keep out. We then have still a legal responsibility if others outside of those permitted groups decide to then go in and want to use it. So that's the challenge I think we have, is that to legally protect ourselves from a health and safety perspective and the guidance that's associated with that, to fully protect ourselves from somebody else using it who isn't part of those permitted groups, who chooses just to jump in there whether the group's in there or not, we still need to protect ourselves against that.
And that's what the signage.
And that's where signage would protect us to a certain degree. But obviously the requirement in terms of ensuring safety would then have that balance around having the need to have lifeguards.
Yeah.
I think also when I was in
just jump in.
yeah,
Some clarity.
I've just referred to the Bevan report and 7.6 in particular, which talks about the foreseeability test and also, you know, compensation cases where they tend to be very factual. And the issue is, if we know there is a hazard there, is it enough just to put a sign up if someone plays into it and really hurts themselves? Especially the piece that's sort of man-made. It's not a natural part there.
So even if we close it all together for anybody to use, we've still got to spend considerable amount of money clearing obstructions. Is that this the point
Well,
we get to?
Sorry, Chair. But not to the level of opening it officially to any groups or public. However, to mitigate the underlying risks, knowing that people will try to enter no matter what signage you put up, they would have to look at the very minimum of clearing the old metal debris from the previous works, maybe removing some of the larger boulders. The underwater hazard they discuss is actually bedrock. It's not a standalone piece of rock. It's actually part of the bedrock. And I don't think it's reasonably practical to expect us to dynamite the bedrock. However, I've looked at alternatives of putting, you know, a standard metal pole with a hazard warning. You can clearly see. The entrapment they talk about, it's actually the old timbers from the original pier that has degraded.
Yeah.
They can easily be filled in. We can actually do a lot of mitigation work for quite a reasonable, the original cost, without putting in the ladders and actually opening it up to all. And then with very clear signage, promoted enhanced life-saving equipment in the area. I can only hope that that would mitigate our liability as much as reasonably practicable.
Yeah.
For the event that somebody is going to go in there, because they always will go in there. Because they are going in there.
Okay. So,
Sorry. Councillor Reeve, come back there and then.
yeah, just in my own mind to be clear. So the costs at 7.2, which is the 24,000 plus 6,500. Those are the costs to
the original works. Yeah.
So that's the work. If we close the pool off altogether, that's the money we need to spend.
I mean, we could do those works within that original cost. Yes.
Okay. And 117,000 at 7.5. That's for opening it.
That's for the mitigation of all the risks to open to the public.
Okay.
So I can't see how we can differentiate between groups and
So
public.
it's the difference between those. We're in for 30-something thousand quid.
It doesn't include the cost of lifeguarding.
Yeah.
That's purely just the structural works.
Brilliant. I think I understand that. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Councillor Maskell.
I think, yeah, I was going to ask some of those questions about costs and about, obviously, we've got to do something, even if we want to keep the pool closed, which obviously there's a big cost difference. It just seems a real opportunity to create something incredible for that area. And something that's probably going to get used anyway, no matter what you do. Is there any way of looking for potential investors in the area to see if you would, wants to help invest in creating something, special, go alongside everything else that you've done down there?
I mean, obviously the investment, I suppose, is one side of it. That risk is still there from our side in terms of as a council and an operator. So even if we got an investor, we would still have that risk that's currently there in terms of needing to make sure, even if that's been paid for by someone else, we'd still need to make sure that those risks are covered off in terms of ongoing safety and provision and lifeguarding and what happens outside of that lifeguarding time as well. Because I think to us, that's probably the bigger risk is we can put as many lifeguards as we want there, even whether we pay for that or somebody else. But actually outside of that, George can't shut the harbour off fully. She could, but obviously that has other implications in terms of the harbour activity. So therefore others could go in there, and they could quite rightly go in there now, but we're not advertising it as a sea pool that's open to the public. And that's the difference. As soon as we say it's open as a sea pool, whether it be to groups or to individuals, we open up that responsibility that we have to make sure that anybody who we're saying could go in there, rightly or wrongly, has to be safeguarded. And that's the changing picture that happens as soon as we say it's now a sea pool. We've got that responsibility.
Chair, could I just add that we effectively become a pool operator in terms of health and safety executive guidance?
Right.
Yeah.
Councillor Wilkinson, Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll come back. I mean, obviously I've eulogised about C School and the great work that's going on there. Can I just ask directly to George, the benefits of having the pool there, do they outweigh the problems of not having it there?
Thank you, councillor. Chair, Councillor Robertson, it is a chicken and egg. That answer. I can see the full benefits of having it in place, but I don't think it's reasonably practical given the cost and the ongoing mitigating risks to do what we need to do to make it actually accessible. I think we can only have it accessible to the public or not at all. I think that's the only safe and fair way. Not having it there, there'll be no difference to the harbour because it's not there now. But having it signposted and looked at in depth as it has done, and those risks mitigated, even if it left as it is, would be of a great benefit to the harbour. It doesn't become an open pool, because I think pool's a bit of the wrong connotation because it's not one now. You know, we would be looking to make it into a pool. At the moment, it floods twice a day, and it's dangerous all the time. Water in or water out, people go in it. So a great benefit just having that decision of which way forwards. It might be one of these opportunities that 5-10 years down the line, it might well become an operating pool. I just don't think it's reasonably practical given what we know today to a great shame, no matter how hard it is to say. I think we should make that decision based on the information today.
Yeah, I think I'm so sorry I put you on.
You did.
I know you're making forever, George. But, I don't want any decision that we make be at the detriment of the C School. And, you know, 5-10 years down the line, LGR can sort that out anyway, can't they?
Have the town council been consulted on this?
Originally, yes.
On
Yeah.
the original report that came in 20.
Which one now, and what have they got any preferences?
They fully understand the diverse nature of this particular project. And to answer your question, Councillor Wilkinson, I have an alternative for the C School.
Councillor Lever, did you want to?
Yeah, thank you.
I'm just returning to section 7 of the resources. And forgive me, Georgie, I think you said that the cost of ongoing lifeguarding is not included in the
No.
figures in here. So this is purely just the capital side of things.
Yes.
Okay. So do we know? Maybe it's in the report somewhere else and I've missed it, and forgive me if I have. Actually, I'm maybe not even going to ask the question because I was going to ask about what the estimated costs of having adequate lifeguarding would be, but you have already said that whatever we put on, if that's the route we decide to go down, that to have adequate, one cannot lifeguard it all the time and one cannot control behaviour all the time.
You said £30,000 a year, didn't you?
For one,
Well,
approximately.
We estimated, Chair, based on one, even if you're on national living wage, then you're looking at a cost of about 30,000 a year. But one may not be adequate because depending on zones and time it takes to get to potential incidents, you may need two, depending on that visibility that provides there. So potentially one, potentially two, depending on how busy it is and how many people may be in there, which again is hard to gauge because of times of year, etc. You may need more than that. So it's very hard to say it's exactly going to cost X in lifeguarding, but there would be an additional revenue cost on top of then the capital cost as well. That's the extra additional revenue cost that wasn't in the report because it's very hard to quantify an exact figure.
Thank you.
Can we move to recommendations? 2.5, there's three, as I see it, options to proceed with. This is on page 66. Would anybody like to start us off by moving something? Yes, Councillor Ricky now.
Well, I've made my mind up, sir. Thank you for the input. My mind up anyway. I'd like to recommend that we approve 2.5 third option.
It remains as present with identified hazards clearly publicised.
Yes, of those three, yeah.
Does anybody want to speak? on
Very
that?
reluctant, I'll have to second to that, I'm afraid.
You have to what, Councillor Wilkinson?
I'll second it.
Oh,
Very
second,
reluctant.
sorry.
Can I clarify that if we do that one, do the identify is at present, that still means that we're taking out the stuff that we've just talked about that's going to cost about 30,000 quid. Yeah. So it's not as it is as present, it's as it is.
As it is, but not changing the railings or doing those further works, just taking out the identifiable risks.
Could we
and
make
clearly.
it clear in our resolution that that what we're talking about doing is removing the hazards that are talked about? Oh God, I can't remember which part. There's the list of hazards that were in there, that's included in that.
The ones that
option.
look like Pompeii.
Yeah.
The-
Is that
the
what it
metal
means?
debris.
Yeah, I mean, the third, if you wanted to go for the third option, which is area remains as it's present, with identified hazards clearly publicised. Obviously the hazards are around, see the risks that are associated with going in there and not going in there. But you could add in terms of the removal of the debris, etc. That we've.
Yeah, if we could, if you wouldn't mind, Councillor Knight, is that okay to just so that it's absolutely.
As read, that there'll be a cost involved, yeah.
Mark, you
Thank you.
want to say something?
Yeah, sorry, members. It's just that I do feel quite strongly about this one because my background is sport and leisure, and I've lifeguarded for many years. And
You're not going to do it for free.
I think it's really important if we do go with the third option, which I think is a good decision, and to make it easier for people that are working at the harbour as officers, I think we need to put out a message as a council that we don't think it is a safe area to swim. If someone then decides to jump in when they've had a few pints or whatever and kills themselves, we can't stop that from happening. This is the problem with that area, but it is a very, very dangerous area with significant drops. It would be, in my opinion, possible to lifeguard safely. You can do it with one lifeguard. That I'm afraid is just naive to think that. I think the council should, if we go to the option to not allow swimming there, that we make it very clear. We do not think it's safe to swim there, and we can remove.
Which is a bit ironic, though, isn't it?
But
If we
to make it swimmable.
if we start removing debris to make it swimming, to make it safe,
That's what I'm
we're
getting
going
at.
to encourage people, aren't we?
Yes.
I think.
That's
Say, yeah.
The recommendations that were there obviously talked about the hazards clearly publicised, which is around not swimming in the harbour, not swimming in that area, which is something, it's wider than just that pool area, because you shouldn't be swimming in the harbour anyway, it's a working harbour. So quite often there is messaging going out around that, because obviously where we have had instances of tombstones, etc. So we can certainly on the back of this improve and put out messages around that. I mean, obviously we're at the time of year when there probably wouldn't be many people thinking about going in there, but certainly that's something we can do in terms of on the instance that George does have, we can just reaffirm that messaging around not swimming in the harbour, as well as obviously that specific area. I think in terms of the recommendations, the area remains as it is present with identified hazards clearly publicised. As part of that, and the report does allude to that, we will obviously make sure that those debris areas are obviously cleared out. I think that the difficulty you've got is by publicising that we're going to clear those areas out, it's making it seem like there might be something happening there that you can go and have a swim in there. So we will make sure, if that hopefully alleviates Mr. Councillor Lever's concerns, we'll make sure those works are carried out, so those loose bits of debris are cleared out as part of the cost that's there. But the recommendation then to stay as it does in terms of remaining as present with the hazards clearly publicised.
But we're not going to be blowing rocks out of the water.
No, and that's you were clear about that.
Yeah.
So
But,
I think nobody will actually, the works that we'll do will know will mitigate the risk as far as reasonably practicable. probably won't be very visual to the layperson looking at what we've done. So it'll look the same, but we know we've actually removed those bottom line hazards that are there at the moment.
And you are looking at posts as well that protrude above the
Well,
waterline.
I'm gonna have to beg to differ because I've never classed it as an underwater hazard because you can see it above the water. But we can look at that post, yes.
I've got a recommendation. And it's been seconded, I think, by. Yes. All those in favour? Any against? No. Okay. Thank you very much. And beyond officers, for having more, thank you. Move on to item 11. Yeah,
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thankfully, this is a nice, straightforward one. So, hopefully, it should be nice and quick. This report is just it just seems to allocate some Section 106 funds, public open space funds, to two projects, one in Braunton and one in Bishop Staunton. The first one is for Braunton Football Club to extend their car park further at Lob Field, and the second one is for the play area and the Stanley Burnley play area in Bishop Staunton to put in some new swings and other equipment into the play area. If members are agreeable to both recommendations, then the third recommendation is that, subject to the approval of the first two, the SNR committee recommends the council vary the capital programme by just over £16,500, and the funds are released. And the funds will be subject to a funding agreement upon such terms and conditions that will be agreed by the senior solicitor and the monitoring officer for external projects.
Councillor Ricky Knapp lives in Bishop's Taunton.
Oh, you got
You're an expert on the amount of swinging in Bishop's Taunton.
Bishop's Taunton as a swinging place. All right, rephrase that. Sorry. Chair, thank you. As you say, I mean, I remember when that was just a field, and now it's a really play area. I go there all the time with my granddaughter, I might add. So thank you, Mark, for that presentation, and absolutely, I would recommend those two ventures.
Councillor Musgrave.
Yeah, thank you. As a Braunton member, I'm delighted that we're supporting Braunton Football Club. It's a huge club, and they are absolutely inundated now with youngsters and expanding their teams, their women's football. That they do a brilliant job, and I know that they need a bit more parking to cope with the additional football. So yeah, I'm really pleased to support this one.
Thank you.
Just it's lovely to hear from members who have real detailed knowledge of where these funds will be spent. My question with regard to the Braunton Football Club is, obviously we're seeking to encourage people to not drive if they can realistically not. So I'm wondering if, as part of the plans, there might be some consideration of additional bike stands or something, just to give people those different options. I don't know.
There was a plan for a new footpath to continue around, wasn't there, ahead of the village to the football club?
Yeah,
What's that?
Yeah, and that it is public highway along there. It's
The verge, isn't it? All the way along.
there is, yeah.
It does go.
Does it go all the way there?
It does go into it comes in front of the council site, and then it goes, pretty sure it does go into the side of the ground. You don't see them.
It goes to the
side.
I think.
I should know, but I can't remember if the pavement goes that far or not. I think it's a good point, but I think, as Councillor Maskell's just alluded to, that there are a huge number of teams now playing at Lob Fields, and if you know the site, the existing car park is pretty small and restricted. So I think this project needs doing to cope with the current demand. But going forward, I don't think these funds could be used to put extra
bits and pieces in, but it is something with the club and perhaps we could work with them on.
I'd be grateful if you could encourage that thinking.
Yeah, sure.
Everybody drove.
Yeah.
Councillor Musgrave.
I think that, you know, when you drive past on the Saturday or on sort of training nights, the majority of the teams do actually walk and cycle. I think but on match days, you've obviously got a lot of visiting teams who come in vehicles, and I think, you know, that is where the problem lies in big match days.
Lots of local players do walk, so.
Yeah.
And that is to be welcomed and encouraged.
Yeah.
Somebody move the recommendations?
I think.
Councillor Ricky Knight, seconded by Councillor Crew Maskell, all those in favour? Thank you. Thank you. Agenda item 12 is the work programme. This is something. Item 12. Work programme. Any comments on what inclusion of anything else, Councillor Wilkinson?
We were looking at going out for consultation on the keys in Barnstable.
The marine facilities, yeah.
Right, yeah, whether there's an update on how we're getting on with those.
That's taking place. So the property team, that in place. Dates.
Yes, we're due that conversation in the next few weeks, I believe.
Lovely,
Yeah,
thank you.
30th of October.
As long as it doesn't get lost in the ether, I'm not suggesting it will. But
Yeah, certainly the consultation has been put in place. Obviously that will come back to members. The reason we've not put it on there in terms of which dates, obviously we need to get the consultation out, number of weeks consultation. And as soon as we've got that back and it's been evaluated, that will then form onto the work programme. So hopefully by the time we have the November meeting, we'll then be able to know which date that's then going to come back for your consideration.
Okay.
thank you, John.
Councillor Weaver.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, absolutely helpful to know when that will be coming, when it's possible to know that. Just wanted to note that since we discussed this last, it's become clear that the fire service have an interest in this as well. And I sit on the fire authority, so I have suggested to the chief fire officer that they contact North Devon Council. If they haven't, please do let me know, or please do get in touch with them at the fire service, because I believe they use.
Might be able to answer that one for you, Councillor Lee. So
Yeah, I can't remember, but a member had made me aware of that and they are identified as a stakeholder.
Brilliant.
And we are working towards bringing this back in January.
Thank you.
Very good.
Any more comments on the work programme or ideas for inclusion in the future? John, have you got any comments?
No, Chair, the only one we added on at the last group leaders meeting was the December one for the Linton Agency performance review. That's a 3-year agreement, and that's due to run out next April. So obviously that report will come from member consideration in December. That's the agency's option has been in place for a number of years now. So the proposal would be that would come back for a further 3 years, which takes it past the LGR date as well, so that it doesn't fall out on the vesting date of potentially any new unitary authority. So that's in place moving forward.
I know we've mentioned it before, we still haven't put it on anywhere, is the assets that we've got in the room to local government reorganisation, what's happening asset wise, and with talking with town councils and parish councils. Is there a reason why that's not gone on yet?
The reason why it's not gone on there, obviously, we're continuing to review our own asset management strategy. There's obviously a conversation we need to have with members about that steer moving forwards, but obviously that's also about understanding the pros and cons in terms of potential asset discussions, because obviously there might be a drive to move an asset to maybe a local council, but obviously want to make sure that the potential, we've got a responsibility as a future council to make sure that unitary is safeguarded as well. So there will be conversations need to be had prior to it coming to committee. I think that's something we need to have a separate member workshop on first. It needs to tie in with the LGR conversations and updates that you're getting, but prior to coming to committee, I think it's something we need to discuss internally first.
We've got a parish forum coming up, and I'm pretty certain it came up at the last parish forum, somebody asked a question about what was going on.
That's fine. We can update.
We'll be having a meeting soon.
Yeah, and we will be, obviously, at the moment, the work is going into obviously the submission, so obviously that will obviously be happening over the next month, but then obviously the next piece of work then, and part of that is member involvement around our future asset management strategy. So obviously, once a decision is made by government about LGR, obviously there'll be a potential vesting date, and obviously there'll be a period before that where obviously decisions around assets won't be able to be made by the existing authority. So that period between now and then, we need to obviously have a clear direction about our future assets in light of our responsibility to the new unitary authority, but also locally about what's best for those assets as well. So that will take place, but we need to get the next month out of the way first for the LGR submission.
Councillor Musgrave and Councillor Walker.
Thank you. Councillor Maddox and I have some concerns about the delays in the development of the Mariners complex in Thornton. And I wondered if it is something that we as a committee could look into, what is going on with that site. And there just seems to be an awful lot of, I believe it's North Devon Homes that is supposed to be redeveloping the site. And it just hasn't happened, and the residents were all sent elsewhere some time ago now. And there's empty property laying there, which, you know, we've got a housing crisis.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Yeah.
In a way, that would be ideal for the scrutiny committee to look at, but there's no reason why it shouldn't come up.
Last week, Chair,
Dates.
at my joint meeting with North Devon Homes, they said they've let the contract for demolition now, didn't they?
I remember
Yeah,
doing
they
this.
So but I don't think they've still got the funding to replace it. But I mean, I know Simon and I've talked about this, about the possibility, you know, there's always a way that you can renovate a property.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that work's been tested.
Can we, this is the work programme, so can we ask for an update to
Certainly get an
come to us
update in
about
terms
it?
of what the current position is with that development and the things obviously that we're involved in with conversations.
There's nothing new in November, so why don't we put that on the agenda, just an update on what's going on, and you can ask questions as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Councillor Walker.
Yeah, this is going back to the assets management and any exercise that may take place before local government reorganisation into probably moving assets between authorities. Can I suggest before we actually start the legal process of moving any assets, that we actually publicise what we're doing, because I have had so many questions in the last couple of weeks about why is North Devon Council getting rid of Ellison playing field? Why does this, what sort of, there's going to be houses built on it. That's always the first thing on social media. As soon as anything like this goes in the paper, there's going to be houses built on it. We're going to have houses built on Ellison playing field. And sort of debunking it's taken quite a lot of my time, and I still don't think people believe me. So I'd suggest if we're going to do it as an actual
An effective media strategy
Yes.
to go alongside it.
Yes,
is what I'm saying. Yeah.
I mean, the position at the moment, Chair, is quite clear. Obviously, we've got our assets and North Devon Council assets, and obviously moving forwards to a new unitary, those assets would transfer. In conversation about any of our assets would need to be a member decision. So anything would need to come back to member anyway. But obviously, we do have a responsibility to that new unitary authority in the public purse. So we just need to be mindful of that in terms of conversations with towns and parishes, and towns and parishes might want to get hold of an asset, but obviously access to funding and access to future funding, as we've seen from the assets we currently have. Obviously, as district council, for some of those major assets, you may not necessarily be able to do that at the town and parish level. So it's got to be all of that pros and cons considered in terms of any future asset strategy. But at the moment,
Can't you carry on selling those?
we can only control what we can control, Chair.
To my point earlier on, I'm not going to say, you know.
Right, thank you, John. We'll leave it there, and thank you very much for everybody's attendance and officers as well. Can I ask Councillor Norman, Councillor Helen and Pete, can we just have a quick meeting in the chairman's office for 5 minutes?
Is the meeting closed?
It's closed, yes.
Lovely. I'll see you later.